guys, today's video is all about Charles Widmore. What were his motivations before Jacob apparently came and visited him, and how did his behavior change after that visit is supposed to have occurred? With that said, this will not be the last video I do on him. As you'll understand by the end of the video, I have reached a conclusion about him and his actions that will definitely require another video to dive fully into. I kind of went back and forth on whether or not to reveal said conclusion in this video. Part of me wanted to save it for the video in which I can really detail the specifics of my theory and interpretation. But ultimately I decided it would be really dissatisfying for me to just continue to hint at that and beat around the bush. So by the end of this video, once I've kind of established why it's not so crazy that I might think what I think about Charles Widmore, it's my hope that you guys will be more open to that idea, and hopefully looking forward to the next video about him that will detail much more specifically why I think it makes sense. But all right, before diving in, I do want to give a special thank you and shout out to my new Patreon supporter, and that is Matt Flower. Matt elected to have me choose his candidate number, so I have assigned him the number 266. As you can see, Matt has been added to the cave of candidate names. Thank you again, Matt, for your support. And to everyone else, you too can become a Patreon supporter for as little as $1. Or you can support this channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and or sharing this video. If you know other Lost fans that might enjoy this channel, please do share it with them. And as always, if you have any thoughts about this video, be it questions or alternate theories, or if you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like to see a video on, please do comment those things below. But for now, let's get lost.
This is Charles Widmore. This is the man whose boat is parked offshore. This is the man that's been trying to find the island. What does he want?
Charles Widmore serves as one of the major antagonists in Lost. But what is it he's actually trying to achieve? This question is complicated by the fact that Widmore himself suggests his goals changed off-screen after the loss of his freighter.
How did you get back here, Charles?
Jacob invited me.
That's a lie. You've never even seen Jacob.
I most certainly have. He visited me not long after your people destroyed my freighter. He convinced me of the error of my ways and told me everything I need to know for this exact purpose.
What purpose?
So let's first explore what Widmore was after prior to this supposed encounter with Jacob, before examining his actions in Season 6. In a way, the answer to the question of what Widmore wants is simple and fairly obvious. He wants the island.
That island's mine, Benjamin. It always was. It will be again.
As early as his teenage years, we know he was fiercely protective and territorial over the island.
I'm going to make this quite simple for you. You're going to tell me what you're doing, how many of you there are, and how you got here.
Let it go.
Unless you're answering my questions, don't speak. I want you to tell me everything or I'll cut off her other hand.
What?
The first one isn't negotiable. It's just to illustrate how serious I am.
No.
hold on. Just hold on. Chill out. We're not supposed to be here. Something's happening to the island. There are these flashes. Do it! No! Wait a second. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Do it!
Anyone outside of his community, he viewed as unworthy of being on the island.
What have you done, Richard?
Calm down. Calm down. It's nothing to do with you.
So it's true. You actually brought one of them to our temple.
He's just a boy.
And he was dying. Then you should have let him die.
And he was always, in every instance we know of, heavily in favor of having them removed from it, even if that meant killing them.
Your orders were to exterminate that woman.
Why, she's no threat to us. She's insane, Charles. Besides, you didn't tell me she had a child. What was it I was supposed to do?
Kill it.
Then one day, he himself is exiled by none other than someone he originally viewed as an unworthy outsider. Undoubtedly enraged by this, Widmore challenges Ben's commitment to protecting the island and then seems to threaten him.
What makes you think you deserve to take what's mine?
Because I won't be selfish. Because I'll sacrifice anything to protect this island.
You wouldn't sacrifice Alex.
You're the one who wanted her dead, Charles. Not the island.
I'll be seeing you, boy.
We know Widmore then spends the next several years looking for the island. But here's where his precise motives get slightly more murky. Does he want to find the island so that he can return against the apparent wishes of Jacob, Richard, and his former community? Or is his sole purpose in finding the island merely to exact revenge on Ben? The fact that he sent mercenaries to extract Ben suggests one thing, but what he later declares to Ben suggests the other.
That island's mine, Benjamin. It always was. It will be again.
So this begs the question. If Widmore's ultimate goal is to reclaim the island as his own, why then did he not return to the island aboard his freighter? Could it be that he knew the freighter was doomed when he sent it? This actually appears to be the case, given his insistence that his estranged son, Daniel Faraday, travel with the freighter.
I want to send you to the island. It will further your research. Show you things you'd never dream of. And more importantly, it will heal you, Daniel.
Why are you doing all this for me?
Because you're a man of tremendous gifts, and it would be a shame to see them go to waste.
I had to send my son back to the island, knowing full well
That's
that...
my son too, Eloise.
The implication here seems to be that both of Daniel's parents understood what would happen to him if he boarded the freighter. Yet they apparently each felt it was a sacrifice worth making. It is worth noting that I believe Eloise's motives are quite separate from Widmore's. I know many people think they are working towards the same goal, and that Charles was privy to the same information left to Eloise in Faraday's journal. But I strongly disagree with this assessment. In future videos, I will be discussing the many reasons why I believe Eloise's motives differ from Widmore's, and why they did not part on the best of terms in 1977. But for now, let's stick with Widmore's motives post-exile. So why would Charles send his own son to the island, knowing he would die? Along these lines, why would he bother to send the freighter at all if he knew it was doomed to fail? The only feasible answer seems to be that he had reason to believe its failure would actually benefit him in the bigger picture. But how could he know these things about future events? I have already stated that I do not believe Widmore had access to the information about the future in Faraday's journal. So how then do I propose that he possessed such foreknowledge? Well, as a matter of fact, there just so happens to be someone in Widmore's employ that demonstrates such foreknowledge. Matthew Abaddon. If you want to hear my thoughts on who Abaddon is, how much he knows and how he knows it, as well as how he came to be associated with Widmore and what his own motives are, feel free to check out Getting Lost number 3, where I discuss all of that in detail. For the purposes of this video, though, what's important is that Abaddon displays an unusual level of knowledge regarding future events, and seems to have come into Widmore's employ sometime between Widmore's banishment and the crash of Oceanic 815. Now, it is clear that Abaddon knew of the fate of 815, and at least some of its passengers, years in advance, given that he appears to John and suggests the walkabout 4 years before the crash.
You know what you need, Mr. Locke? You need to go on a walkabout.
He later confirms this to John.
John, you're not really going to pretend you don't remember that I was an orderly in the hospital right after your accident? That I was the one who told you to go on the walkabout? The same walkabout that put you on the plane that crashed on that island?
No. I remember.
I help people get to where they need to get to, John. That's what I do for Mr. Widmore.
Let's consider the very real possibility that Abaddon is intimately familiar with the chain of events leading up to and following the crash of Flight 815. This would make him truly invaluable to Widmore, as Charles could use this knowledge of the future to reach the outcome he desires, that being vengeance upon Ben, as well as his eventual reclaiming of the island. Desmond's arrival on the island, the crash of 815, the turning of the failsafe key, the conflict with the mercenaries, Ben being removed from power. Each of these events are steps on the path to Widmore's eventual return to the island, and none of them can happen without each of the ones preceding them. The way in which each of these events are intricately connected gives Widmore the motivation to ensure they all happen. We know he pushed Desmond along the path to the island. We know he staged the wreckage of 815 to prevent anyone else from finding where it really ended up. And we obviously know he sent the freighter. I propose he did each of these things because he knew what they would lead to and was using that knowledge to his benefit. But how did Jacob coming to visit and redirect him fit into this? Did Charles not know that was going to happen? Well, let's first ask another question. How do we know Jacob came to visit him? The only evidence we have of this is that Widmore himself says it happened. And given everything we know about him, I'm not sure that's enough. But perhaps the reason we should believe it is because it's the only explanation we get for what Widmore is up to in Season 6. So let's now examine what it is Widmore is suggesting he came to the island to achieve at Jacob's behest, as well as what other evidence there is to support this idea. According to Charles,
Jacob visited me not long after your people destroyed my freighter. He convinced me of the error of my ways.
Shortly after this, he says to the man in black,
I brought Desmond Hume back here because of his unique resistance to electromagnetism. He was a measure of last resort.
Taking these two statements together, it would seem Jacob came to Widmore and informed him not only about protecting the candidates, but also about how Desmond would be able to temporarily negate the source, making the man in black mortal again. On the surface, this seems to reasonably explain what Widmore was working towards all season, and how he knew about things such as the man in black and the candidates. But does this explanation make sense? Let's go through Widmore's timeline after the sinking of the freighter and see if there are any holes. The earliest point at which we see Charles after the Oceanic 6 return home is the night Ben visits him in his penthouse. This is at least 10 months after the freighter was destroyed, given that Ben arrived in Tunisia in late October of 2005, and this visit can only be about a week later at the earliest. Now, Charles claims Jacob visited him
not long after your people destroyed my freighter.
But it's unclear just how shortly after the freighter's destruction this happened. Are we to believe it happened prior to the penthouse conversation between Ben and Charles? In this exchange, Widmore declares the island is his and vows to reclaim it.
That island's mine, Benjamin. It always was. It will be again.
He then states that the hunt is on for both of them.
But you'll never find it.
Then I suppose the hunt is on for both of us.
If Jacob had already invited Widmore back at this point, then he wouldn't actually need to hunt for the island at all. And if Jacob had shown him the error of his ways, surely he wouldn't still be announcing possession over the island in such a way. With all that said, the phrase "shortly after" isn't exactly strictly defined. So perhaps the visit occurred after this confrontation. The next time we see Widmore chronologically is nearly 3 years after the destruction of the freighter, and within a month or so of when he will set out on his submarine to finally return to the island. This means the alleged encounter with Jacob absolutely would had to have occurred by this point. And indeed, when he speaks to John about getting him back to the island, he speaks of an approaching war, suggesting he is fully aware by this point of the coming conflict with the Man in Black.
Why would you help me?
Because there's a war coming, John. And if you're not back on the island when that happens, the wrong side is going to win.
Yet, in this same conversation, Widmore lies to John repeatedly. First, he claims he led the others peacefully for decades.
I was their leader.
The others?
They're not the others to me, they're my people. We protected the island, peacefully, for more than 3 decades.
When in reality, we know the conflict between Dharma and the hostiles escalated under his leadership. Next, he claims Ben tricked him into banishment by convincing him to move the island and preventing his return.
The camera in the desert, that was yours.
Yeah.
How did you know I'd be there?
And that's the exit. I was afraid Benjamin might fool you into leaving the island, as he did with me.
But as we later find out, this is not at all what happened. The following morning, Widmore continues to deceive Locke by saying that he sent the freighter, mercenaries, and C4 to the island, all so that John could take over from Ben as leader.
You still don't trust me?
You sent a team of killers and a boatload of C4 to the island. That doesn't exactly scream trust.
I needed Linus removed, so it could be your time.
Right.
Here's how we know this isn't true. In Season 4, Ben claims the mercenaries have orders to kill everyone else on the island once they have him in their custody.
Once they have me, their orders are to kill everyone else on the island.
Given that this comes from Ben, it's not immediately clear if this is true or not. However, in the episode Cabin Fever, this particular assertion of Ben's seems verified as true when Kimi retrieves the instructions for the secondary protocol.
What is that?
It's a secondary protocol.
What does it say?
Since where Linus is going.
How would Mr. Widmore know that?
She's a very smart man. And if Linus knows that we're going to torch the island, there's only one place that he can go.
What do you mean, torch the island?
Note that the secondary protocol is to head to the Orchid, whereas the torching of the island was apparently always the plan, which Kimi concludes Ben already knows about thanks to his spy on the boat. Some people might argue that Widmore didn't actually instruct Kimi to do this, and that Kimi's extreme measures are indeed due to the sort of cabin fever the crew had been suffering from. One reason I disagree is that the materials required for torching the island, not to mention the C4 and Dead Man's Trigger, were brought on the freighter to begin with, indicating this was always the plan.
What are you going to do with all that?
But in case you're still not convinced Widmore is lying about removing Ben for John's sake, consider what happens when Kimi comes face to face with Locke. He doesn't recognize his face, and he shows no reaction to his name.
Is that Leo?
My name is John Locke, and I have no conflict with you. And neither do the people on that boat. So, why don't you put your knife down? We can talk about this.
Well, John Locke, never really been one to talk.
It seems likely Keamy would have attempted to kill John had Ben not ambushed him. Furthermore, when the mercenaries attacked the barracks, they showed no concern whatsoever about Locke getting killed in the crossfire. It seems to me that if their mission was to remove Ben specifically so that Locke could lead, they probably would have had strict orders to avoid accidentally killing him. All of this is to say, Widmore is clearly lying his ass off to John when they meet in Tunisia. And this doesn't seem to add up with the idea that Jacob had convinced Charles to turn over a new leaf by this point. A little while after his encounter with Locke, Widmore provides Son with the intel and the means to kill Ben. One could perhaps argue that Charles wanted to ensure Ben wouldn't kill Penny. But still, this doesn't quite scream that he's a changed man. Later this same week, we see Charles show up at the hospital Desmond is in, presumably to abduct Desmond and bring him back to the island. Moving into Season 6, Widmore arrives and sets up base on Hydra Island. At some point, he has the Ajira plane rigged with explosives, though his reasons for doing this aren't clear, as these would not have killed the men in black. This is something Widmore should have known if his whole reason for bringing Desmond was to make it so that the men in black could be killed. If the C4 was merely intended to remove the plane as a means of escape, why not just go ahead and destroy the plane to begin with? Rigging the plane this way only risks getting candidates killed, which is exactly what ends up happening. Anyways, shortly after returning to the island, Widmore comes face to face with Sawyer, who is sent over to Hydra by the Man in Black. Sawyer concludes from the sonic fence being erected that Widmore intends to go to war with MIB, and proposes a deal.
Well, here's the deal, Chief. I'll go back over there and tell him the coast is clear. I didn't find anybody. Then I'll bring the old man right to your doorstep. Then you can kill him.
After sending Sawyer back, a team of Widmores, led by Zoe, surveil MIB's camp. Once they see Jen start to leave, they tranquilize everyone and bring Jen back with them to Hydra, seemingly because they think he can help locate the source. There's a brief but uneventful confrontation between Charles and MIB, after which Widmore has Desmond revived so they can test his resistance to electromagnetism. While preparing the test, one of Widmore's men is accidentally killed. Charles shows no concern for this man.
Sorry. Are we ready?
Let's go.
Before initiating the test, Widmore tells Desmond he'll later ask him to make a sacrifice.
I'm going to ask you to make a sacrifice.
Sacrifice? What the bloody hell do you know about sacrifice?
My son died here for the sake of this island.
Your wife, my own daughter,
hates me.
It may be worth noting that both of these so-called sacrifices were decisions Charles made before Jacob would have visited him. Shortly after Desmond survives the test unscathed, he is taken back to the main island by Saeed. A couple days later, in response to this abduction of their abductee, Widmore's team threatens retaliation on the Men in Black in the form of mortar attacks. Later this same day, Sawyer brings all of the remaining candidates to Hydra Island. That is, except for Jack. And Saeed, if he still counts as a candidate after his death and infection, which I feel is up for debate. Widmore promptly calls off his deal with Sawyer, and orders a mortar attack on MIB's remaining group.
I understand, Charles.
Widmore! What the hell are you doing?
What's it look like I'm doing? Hands up, now.
We had a deal.
Deal's off. We got him. If you got a sight line unlocked, fire when ready.
Get down!
He then has his captives locked in a polar bear cage, even going so far as to threaten Kate's life.
Drop the gun! Put the gun down or I'll kill her!
He also has the sonic fence moved closer, for reasons that are once again not obvious.
Is the fence live yet?
They're saying about an hour.
We haven't got an hour. Tell them to work faster.
With the help of Jack and Saeed, the Man in Black has the prisoners freed from their cage. And with the help of Widmore's C4, he executes his own trap on the remaining candidates. In the chaos, Widmore and Zoe apparently flee to the barracks in an outrigger. There they come across Ben, Richard, and Miles, at which point the exchange about Jacob occurs. It's interesting that here, Widmore blames Ben and his people for what happened to the freighter, feigning ignorance of Keamy's actions. Compare this to his previous conversation with Locke, in which he did not refute or even question John's comment about him sending a boatload of C4 to the island.
We've never even seen Jacob. I most certainly have. He visited me not long after your people destroyed my freighter.
You sent a team of killers and a boatload of C4 to the island. That doesn't exactly scream trust.
I needed Linus removed so it could be your time.
And finally, after being betrayed by Ben, Widmore and Zoe are confronted by the Man in Black, who asks to be told why Desmond was brought to the island. MIB quickly executes Zoe, before Widmore presumably tells him what he wants to know. Then Widmore is shot repeatedly by Ben, bringing a sudden end to the industrialist story. So let's focus first on the second part of Widmore's claim. Does it seem true that he has been shown the error of his ways? Do his actions show he's been changed or improved in any significant way? Well, throughout seasons 5 and 6, he continues to be deceptive, manipulative, and flat-out dishonest. This is evidenced by his several lies to Locke in Tunisia, his double cross of Sawyer, and his comment to Ben in which he denies responsibility for the destruction of the freighter. He also continues to show a complete lack of regard for human life. He shows no concern over the death of his own man.
Zoe. Are we ready?
He orders the bombing of the Man in Black's camp, which includes at least 2 children, and demonstrates a convincing willingness to kill Kate.
It doesn't matter to me whether she lives or dies.
Sure, Widmore says he's there to save existence by stopping the Man in Black from escaping, which is a noble goal, if true, but none of his actions indicate he has changed at all. He is still untrustworthy and has no hesitation about murdering innocent people. This is still classic Widmore. But does that necessarily mean Jacob didn't visit him? I've previously talked at length about Jacob, his philosophy, and why he doesn't like to interfere directly, particularly in Getting Lost number 11. As I covered pretty extensively in that video, I do not believe Jacob would ever interfere so directly as to appear to someone and tell them exactly what to do and why. Especially not someone as consistently corrupt as Charles Widmore. As Richard says,
Jacob isn't telling us what to do because Jacob never tells us what to do.
The scene in which this line is said occurs a mere 4 episodes before Widmore claims Jacob came to him. Now, it is true that Jacob did sometimes provide instructions. Some examples include asking Ilana to protect the candidates, telling Dogan to give them sanctuary, having the others build the Hydra runway, tasking Hurley with bringing Saeed to the temple, and later Jack to the lighthouse.
I told you to bring Jack with you.
But in each of these cases, Jacob establishes an objective without dictating any moral decisions that may need to be made along the way. Nor does he typically disclose the true purpose behind the objective, which in many cases is merely to provide people with information and choices. For instance, in the case of Ilana, Jacob did ask her to help protect the candidates, but he didn't tell her how to do so, beyond going to the temple.
After I brought them to the temple, what do I do?
Ask Ricardus. He'll know what to do next.
He says Richard will know what to do, but lo and behold, Jacob never told Richard what to do.
So, Richard, what do we do next?
Is it? I have no idea what we do next.
Some might argue that by the time Jacob would have appeared to Widmore, he had no other option but to be direct with him. But I disagree with this as well. Consider that the very last time we see Jacob, he is anointing Jack protector of the island. And yet he still doesn't tell him, or any of the others, how to actually stop his brother. All he'd have to do is mention how Desmond could be used as a weapon. The very same thing Widmore indicates Jacob told him. But he doesn't. Instead, he lets Jack and his companions piece that together on their own.
There's a light at the center of the island. You have to make sure it never goes out. That's how you protect it.
Your monster friend said there was nothing to protect it from.
You have to protect it from him. You must do what I couldn't. What I wasn't able to do.
You want us to kill him? Is that even possible?
I hope so, because he is certainly going to try to kill you. You remember that bamboo field you woke up in when you first got here?
Yeah.
Beyond that field, across the ridge, is the heart of the island. That's where the light is. That's where he's trying to go. And that's what you have to protect.
Past the bamboo, there's nothing out there.
Yes, there is, Jack. And now you'll be able to get there.
Jacob didn't say anything to me about Desmond.
Doesn't sound like he said anything about anything.
It's kind of true, dude. He's worse than Yoda.
And this is just the final example. Jacob's last days alive and beyond are filled with instances where he could have simply told people how to defeat the Man in Black or how to avoid his manipulations. But he doesn't. Because to him,
I wanted them to help themselves. To know the difference between right and wrong without me having to tell them. It's all meaningless if I have to force them to do anything.
and yet, in spite of all this, Jacob apparently decided Widmore, of all people, was worthy of the most vital information of all. This being right after this man would have just sent mercenaries to the island to torch it, presumably with the intention of killing everyone on the island. This, of course, would have inevitably included Richard, the others, all of the remaining candidates, and Jacob himself. Given Jacob's philosophy, and his desire to prove his brother wrong about mankind, it's not at all believable to me that he would seek out someone who has spent his entire adult life, at least since the age of 17, being a murderous, selfish, power-grubbing, genocidal bully, and telling him the equivalent of, hey, that stuff wasn't cool, but if you do this, this, and this, we'll call it good. But wait, doesn't Jacob send Hurley to the lighthouse so that Widmore can find the island?
Someone is coming to the island. I need you to help them find it.
Well, no, actually. As Hurley later realizes, Jacob just wanted to get them away from the temple and for Jack to discover the mirror.
It's my house. It's
It's the house I grew up in.
Why is my name written down on this thing?
He didn't tell me.
What does he want from me?
Are we supposed to do
What does he want from
I don't
me?
know, Jack! Jack broke your lighthouse, dude. Mission unaccomplished. Whoever you said we needed to help get to the island is totally screwed.
Well, I'm sure they'll find some other way.
So, everything you wanted me to do didn't get done, and you don't even care. Wait a minute. Did you want Jack to see what was in that mirror?
In reality, Widmore did not need help finding the island. And while I'm sure Jacob did want Charles to arrive with Desmond in tow, so that his brother could ultimately be defeated, I do not believe he instructed or invited Widmore to do this. By this point, I've made it clear I don't believe Jacob ever directly communicated with Widmore. But how else would Charles know to bring Desmond? How could he have known what he knew about the Man in Black and the candidates? Well, who else knew these things? There's Alana's group, but they certainly seemed opposed to working with Widmore leading up to the freighter's mission.
And we had to try our best to talk you out of working for Charles Widmore.
I have no idea who that is.
He's the man who chartered the boat you'll be getting on next week. And my friend, you do not want to get on that boat. You're playing for the wrong team.
Yeah? What team are you on?
The one that's going to win.
And it would be strange for them to suddenly trust him. That really only leaves one other option. The Man in Black himself. For the bulk of Season 6, and indeed the bulk of the series, the Man in Black executes the longest of long cons to wipe out the candidates and escape. Is it so outlandish to think that the conflict with Widmore may have been part of that long con? After all, if not for this conflict, Widmore's submarine, and Widmore's C4, the specifics of the Man in Black's plan would had to have been quite different. If not for the sub being left unprotected until he was in the water, and if not for Kate getting shot at that exact moment, how would the Man in Black have succeeded in getting Jack and the bomb onto that sub? If not for Kate's wound, how were the candidates meant to discover the bomb before the countdown ended?
Jack, can't find a first aid kit, dude.
Jen, my pack. There might be a shirt in there I can use for pressure.
Remember that the bomb would not have gone off if Sawyer hadn't pulled the wires, which wouldn't have happened if the bomb hadn't been discovered within the first few minutes inside the sub, while its timer was still ticking down.
Don't pull those wires out. We're okay. Nothing's gonna happen.
If I don't pull these wires, Locke's gonna blow us to kingdom.
No,
come.
he's not. Locke can't kill us.
What?
This is what he wanted. This is what he's been waiting for. Everything that he has done has been to get us here. He wanted to get us all in the same place at the same time. A nice enclosed space where we had no hopes of getting out of. He told me that he could kill any one of us whenever he wanted. So what if he hasn't because he's not allowed to? What if he's trying to get us to kill each other?
Stay out of my way, Doc.
No, if he wanted that thing to blow up, why would he put a timer in it? Why not just throw it inside?
I don't care.
Nothing is gonna happen.
It's not your decision to make.
He can't kill us!
I'm not gonna stand here and do nothing.
James. We are going to be okay. Just have to trust me.
But what about Desmond? As discussed in several previous videos, there is quite a bit of evidence to suggest the Man in Black became tethered to the source when he was tossed into it, and therefore was unable to escape the island so long as it remained active. In fact, Jacob's absolute certainty that his brother will head for the source tells us that negating it was always part of what the Man in Black needed to do to escape. And as we know, this is something Desmond is uniquely qualified for. Indeed, after Widmore allegedly reveals to him that Desmond was meant as a weapon to be used against him, the Man in Black shows no concern whatsoever about this, and instead becomes eager to find and use Desmond to put out the light.
Looks like someone helped him out. No, Ben, someone helped me out.
What did Widmore say to you?
He said Desmond was a failsafe. Jacob's last resort in case, God forbid, I managed to kill all of his beloved candidates. One final way to make sure that I never leave this place.
Then why are you happy that he's still alive?
Because I'm gonna find Desmond. And when I do, he's gonna help me do the one thing that I could never do myself.
And even when Jack later confidently declares he will kill him, the Man in Black still doesn't decide he should be more concerned about Desmond's role as a weapon against him. Instead, he remains intent on using him to destroy the island.
You think you're going to destroy the island?
I think?
That's right. Because that's not what's going to happen.
Then what's going to happen, Jack?
I'm going to kill you.
How do you plan to do that?
That's a surprise.
Okay. Well, let's get on with it.
So it stands to reason that the Man in Black may have had just as much motive as Jacob to have Desmond brought back to the island. But doesn't the idea that the Man in Black brought Charles back to the island have at least as many holes in it as the idea that Jacob did? For example, why would the Man in Black send Saeed to kill Desmond if he needed him alive? Also, according to this theory, was Charles unwittingly doing the bidding of the monster, or was he a willing participant in the con? In an upcoming video, we'll dive deep into the timeline and actions of Widmore from the perspective of this theory, and see whether or not it actually holds up. But before doing so, we may first need to go over the nature of the monster and what its abilities are and aren't. This will be the focus of our next few videos. Until then, namaste and good luck.
Oh, hello there. If you're like me, you can't get enough of Lost. So if you'd like to be notified when more videos like this one arrive, just click right up here to subscribe. In the meantime, if you'd like to check out other videos like this one, just click right up here. Or, if you'd like to check out a fun talk show filmed in an abandoned Dharma broadcast station, just click right over here. And as always, remember that this channel is like the island. It wants you to come back.